Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by Mr. Issac Barnes, the president and founder of Eminent Future. How are you doing today, Issac?
Man, I'm doing great. I feel blessed. How are you, brother?
I'm the same. Thank you for asking. So let's get right into it here. So what is Eminent Future? Can you describe what your company does?
Yeah, so Eminent Future is a digital product and innovation company, right? We focus on helping the federal government figure out ways to use technology to create societal change, right? We aren't like every other government contractor in the fact that we don't just do butts and seats. That's the terminology that's used in this space, meaning we just find people and put them in positions. We like to work with people that are thinking about what the future looks like. We want to work on projects that are thinking about what the future looks like, because if we wanted more of the same, we could just go work for somebody else. But this isn't about that. It's about shifting culture, shifting society, and changing narratives. It's the best way I can explain it. That's what we do. And so, what that looks like, we use modern technology, we use mobile devices, we use tablets, we use, VR, AR, crypto, blockchain, all of those technologies. And we, bring them together in a way where it creates experiences for federal agencies to provide better value to their customers and to the citizens of this country. It's the best way to explain it.
No, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to actually start the business?
Oh man, so my journey in this business started around 9/11. So I was terrified, and literally 9/11 day, I was sitting at the MEP station about to go to the Marine Corps that day. I had just signed my name on the contract, brother. I signed Isaac. And then in the room comes three dudes yelling, "They just hit the towers, they just hit the towers." And at this time I had just turned 19. So I was still a kid basically, right? And we all get up and we go to the TV set. We're watching the TV, and it's just straight up mayhem happening on the TV, right? This was 9/11, one of the biggest disasters in American history. And so I was, terrified. I didn't know what was going to happen. So, I ended up waiting another month, made my decision. I'm going to go to the Marine Corps. I'm going to stick with my original goal. I go to the Marine Corps, become a computer programmer. I'm working for Secretary of Defense, indirectly through the Commandant of the Marine Corps. And I was like the data guy, and I was an IT person. I didn't have an IT background at this point. That wasn't what I was doing. I was literally working in factories before I joined the Marine Corps. And so I got thrust into this, federal Department of Defense IT space. And, I did that for about 4 years, got out and went and worked for another company. They had a contract with the Secretary of Defense's office. And I get there, I'm coming in as like one of the most junior dudes on the team. 5 years later, I end up working my way up to, being the right-hand man to the CEO of this company, and learn the whole game from him, right? And so that led me to then going and doing consulting work and learning the game in different ways. Like, oh, I can actually do this as an owner too, right? And so I convinced that guy. I was like, listen, if you want me to stay here working with you, I need to own my own company. And so he hired me back in my same job, basically through my company, instead of being employed for him. And that's how this journey began as an entrepreneur in this space. The best way to explain it. And the rest has been like, strategic moves and chess moves to get to this point.
Wow. And how did you get involved in government contracting, and why did you choose that route specifically?
So at that time, I had two paths in my mind. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That's been in my blood since day one. Like, my dad was an entrepreneur. My mom was a hustler. My brothers were, they were entrepreneurs and hustlers. That's just our DNA. Government contracting made sense because I felt like it was a place where you can have an impact in society that most people don't know about. But, these small little shifts and changes impact hundreds and hundreds and thousands, if not millions of people, right? And so it was very attractive in that way of being able to dictate and control and shift narratives using technology at a national level. Yeah. And so the attractive part came from, being one of the guys behind the scenes working on these projects where I can release software that impacts millions of people the next day, right? And there's not many other industries where you can get that type of impact. You know, I was in the Marine Corps, so being a Marine, it was like being in DOD felt like home for me. You know, it wasn't like going to Coca-Cola or going to, you know, IBM or Apple, where it would have been a completely different environment. So that space from a business perspective just made sense because I had tons of connections. I knew how it all worked. I knew, you know, most of the people in the environment, and it was familiar to me, right? And so it was just a matter of tying that to my natural entrepreneurial spirit.
Interesting. And can you mention some of the projects that your company has worked on?
So I can mention who we've worked for. I can't go into detail on everything, but you know, over the years we've supported Marine Corps, we've supported Army, we supported Navy, we supported the Pentagon. We've also supported President Obama, President Trump. We supported Department of State. We've done some stuff in the intelligence community, pretty much across the board, you know, Air Force, across the board in DOD, most of it, you know, and then also supporting White House and then indirectly supporting everybody else through that work we've done there. And then we've also done some commercial stuff as well. You know, some of the clients we work for, we did some work for the New Jersey Nets. We built out a system for them. We built some stuff for a company called Zebra Technologies. We did work for Afro.com. We built and modernized them. They were doing like this old archaic way of publishing their newspapers, and we helped them, you know, revamp their whole process and go digital. It was one of the things we did. And so a lot of the work we've been doing has been around like helping people connect to the millennial generation, you know, figuring out how to move from 1980, 1990 to the 2000s, 2010s, 2020 and beyond, man. And that's why we labeled it innovation, right? Because we don't just come in and you say, hey, I need this software and we give you that. Right. We look at the whole situation in totality and figure out what's the best path forward and how can you get the most value. It's the best way to explain it.
Gotcha. So let's talk about what I know everyone has tuned in for is the big B, that $13 billion, $13.4 billion contract.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
So what give us some details as much as you can on that, and how did it feel being awarded that that contract?
Man, if I'm being honest, I felt humbled. I felt blessed. I literally prayed for days, brother. Like when I got that, when I saw that email come in, and the beauty of it was the way that it came into fruition, right? I always tell people, I'm super spiritual. So if you haven't caught on to that by now, like that's the foundation of who I am. You know, I'm a believer. And when it came, you know, I've always said this principle of everything that God wants to bring to us comes to us through others. And so the way we treat people and the way we make others feel will dictate what we receive from the Creator. That's my core thesis and belief. And so this whole situation happened in ways that I couldn't have imagined. But, you know, looking back in hindsight, it was like key relationships that made it happen, right? So the funny part about it, I told that story for the first question you asked me for a reason, because the guy that helped me figure out that this was possible, I was his first customer when I was in the Marine Corps. And so he started his company back when I was a Marine, and I was his first customer, helping him, me and his team working side by side, and he had a contracting company, right? And so he grew his company from like 8 people back then to over 300 people. And I watched him do it. And I was like, dude, how'd you do this? I went and sat down with him and had lunch with him, and he walked me through the process. And he was like, the probability, he was like, I played the probabilities game. He said, the difficulty of winning something large has the same amount of probability as the difficulty of winning something small. And I was like, that's so genius. You just turned it into math. And so he's like, if you're gonna do this, take the elevator approach. While everybody else is taking the escalator and the stairs, you can take the elevator, right? And you can leapfrog them. And I was like, that's so genius. So I said, if I can help you do this, will you do this with me? We can go do this together. He said, sure. And so the next day I have 11 people from his team helping me. And so we set out to find the biggest deals in the federal space that we could possibly find. And we bid on all of them.
Mm.
And they came through. That's the best way to explain it. And so that's some inside knowledge that, you know, that applies to anything you're doing in life, right? And I want to provide as much value in this conversation as possible to people and not just make it about me. But this deal is one of the most special situations just because it's literally about, and at the time we didn't even know Space Force was coming. Like that just happened to be an added blessing that God just made, you know, possible. It was originally just an Air Force situation. And then they announced Space Force. And then Space Force is a part of Air Force. So it all just got, you know, lumped into one bucket. And so the deal is to help Space Force and Air Force do what I've been doing my whole career. Figure out how to use innovation and use technology to modernize the entire Air Force and modernize and make sure Space Force is prepared for the future. That's the whole point of it. And so they basically gave us a runway, right? They said, this is the total, right? When this is the total, you now have a runway to go throughout Air Force and Space Force to get as many projects as you can under this umbrella and help us move into the future. And that's what it is.
Ooh. So how long is that contract for?
It's a 5-year with an additional 5 options. So it's a 10-year runway to bring as much innovation across the country as possible.
Wow, that's amazing. So I know there are many Black-owned companies that are interested in obtaining government contracts also. What would you say is the formula for obtaining the multi-million and clearly the billion-dollar government contracts?
And I answered that previous question the way I did to give them some insight on this so I can go further, right? So the key, and I'm giving away some trade secrets, and I'm gonna give this to you because, you know, this, you know, I support what you're doing. The key, there's 2 pillars. There's trust and there's timing. If you can foster trust, that means that's the most important part of it is EQ, you know, emotional intelligence, right? People don't talk about this in this industry at all, but this is what I've learned after doing this. If you can foster the trust, meaning when you walk in a room or when you have conversations with people, you do what you say, you have integrity, you have solid character. They don't have to worry about, you know, if they give you something, you're going to disappear tomorrow with all this money. You know, you have a track record of success. You've shown that you can do this. Other people are speaking good about you, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? That's basic human nature, is trust, right? You're not going to do a deal with anybody you don't trust, right? Nobody is. That's basic. Then the other fact of it is timing. In the federal space and in the federal market, it takes patience. You know, they have a lot of money that they spend. They have money that they have to spend. But if you are in the right place at the right time, saying the right message at the right time, or offering the right situation at the right time, you're not going to win anything, right? And so it's the combination of those 2 things. And I tell people that all the time. And if you're just starting off, knowing who your true customer is the key point. A lot of people get into this space and they go target the government directly. You're not going to win that way. Unless you have a product that they can't get anywhere else, a non-commodity product, right? Like if you're building space shuttles like Elon Musk, if you're building space shuttles that, you know, are reusable and nobody's ever done this in history before, then yeah. But if you're not at that level, the key is you want to target people that are already in the space and bring value to them, right? Come in as a subcontractor to other companies. You have to. There's no way of avoiding that unless, like I said, you have something completely unique. So I think that's the key. Obviously, like, it's like you have to build a business. You can't come in and just think you're just going to do this all by yourself. You have to actually build up infrastructure and build a company and have like departments and divisions, and you need to be thinking through your business plan. All that stuff matters, right? So I gave you like some 101s, but I've also given you the master's degree level all in one. And I think if people can navigate their way and remember those key principles along the way, they'll find success.
That makes a lot of sense. So switching gears slightly, let's talk about diversity in the tech space. What are your thoughts on the importance of young Black men, women, young Black youth getting involved in technology?
I think it's one of the most important things that our generation can embrace, accept, and promote and make viral, right? And the reason why I say that, I think we're at a threshold, we're almost at this threshold where there's going to be no turning back, where everything is technology. You know, I believe today, every company is a tech company. And if you're not, you're going to go out of business, right? The number one reason why businesses go out of business is cash flow, right? So every company needs to be a tech company. And I think every person needs to be thinking like an entrepreneur. Right now, we have this trend of people leaving their jobs and starting their own businesses, going in and investing, going into crypto, becoming influencers, et cetera, et cetera. The great resignation is real, right? And what's enabling that? Technology, right? So if you are focused on an industry that is outside of tech, that industry will become tech. It has to. So I think Black and brown people just in general have to focus on understanding and navigating this space. You don't have to be an expert in coding. You don't have to be an expert in data, and you don't have to be a cybersecurity expert. There's a lot of other areas that are involved. And the analogy that I like to use with people is like in basketball, right? Everybody isn't a player on an NBA team. You have coaches, you have assistants, you have trainers, you have doctors, you have nurses, you have everything, water boys, you have apparel guys, you have marketing teams, you have cheerleaders. It's the same as true in tech. Everybody isn't actually hands-on coding and building things. There's a whole support cast that's around you. So I think just understanding that is super important. And then from a company perspective, I think companies need to do a better job of promoting, the people within there so that more Black people and brown people can see who's behind the scenes and actually doing this work, right? Because all we're seeing today is entertainers. We're seeing, actors, actresses, musicians, and then athletes. And now we're starting to see more politicians and people in that space. But most kids, if you walk into an inner city, have no idea that they can go into tech and that's a viable career. Right. So I think it's one of the most important fights of our generation is to correct that, because if we don't, it's like we're living through like the equivalent of the Industrial Revolution all over again. And there's going to be so many of us left behind.
Well said. And part of what you mentioned was cryptocurrency. What are your thoughts on crypto, blockchain, and how that can be used to create wealth in the Black community?
I think crypto is one of the most revolutionary technologies to come along since the internet. I truly do. And what we've seen happen in the internet is every industry be disrupted and everyone's lives are disrupted. We went from, having pagers and old clunky cell phones and Walkmans to having these things.
Right.
And the fact that every single person in America damn near has one of these in their hands shows how powerful that technology can be. And so what has happened from that perspective is like in crypto, we used to have the economy, right? And right now we're seeing what happens when you have an economy. It's vulnerable, right? You have gas prices that start shooting up. You got rising inflation, housing issues. I can keep going.
Yeah.
So crypto is now allowing us to build our own economies. You can architect and design your own economy. That has never been done before. And people think of it just from the perspective of, okay, you can create your own money, you create NFTs, et cetera, et cetera. This is just the beginning. I promise you, 20 to 30 years, we will, instead of having a singular economy, we will be talking about this from a multi-dimensional economy because it's shifting towards that. And so I think it's extremely important for people, if you don't want to invest the time to actually go into it, like meaning creating things in it, being in these networking events and communities, at a minimum, you should be learning about it so that you can speak that language because it is the future.
Yeah. that language, it's like almost learning another language, like apart from English.
Yes.
You don't understand that language, you're just left out.
Yes. And that's why they call it Web3, because, you know, our parents didn't understand when you were like, Mom, just post it on your wall.
You're right.
They're like, what are you even talking about? What is a wall?
Right.
Like, how do I post something on a wall? What are you talking about? But now today they get it. You know what I mean? It's the equivalent of that, but it's on an economic level and it's on an investment level and on a financial level. They've disrupted that industry to the point where they've added a new language and vernacular to it. And if you're not, you know, understanding it, just like if you're not understanding stocks, if you're not understanding, you know, business and any other form of investing, it's very difficult to make any money. Yeah. Right, outside of a job. And if you don't understand 401ks, if you don't understand health and benefits, if you're like, it gets tough, right? So I think people need to focus on at least educating themselves so they don't get left behind.
Agreed. And you also mentioned, you know, it's not just people creating their money, but that's part of it. You have what's called XMoney Token.
Correct.
Could you speak a little bit on that and tell us what that's about?
Yeah, so it was birthed out of a project we had with the US Army. We were having a conversation with the Army at the time about building the Army's first enterprise-wide blockchain, right? And basically revolutionizing the way they handle their, you know, personnel, their payroll, human resources, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the key components of that was, hey, you guys have all of these servers, you can get into mining and start getting into this aspect of it. And you can also do it in a way where it's not using fossil fuels. You can use clean energy to do it. Right. And so we got to this point, got all the way through those conversations. It got to the point where we started having some conversations and they're like, we want to go in a different direction. We're like, okay, cool. So we launched xMooney on our own with those same core principles baked in. And it went from just that core idea to over, I think at the height of the market before this whole situation happened, we had close to 5,000 holders of it with zero promotion. And we had, you know, we built a decentralized mining network of miners all around the globe that we were giving tokens when they've contributed to helping us figure out how to make mining in itself more sustainable. And that's what we built out. And so we attracted a community of all majority Black and brown people across the globe and started educating them on mining and educating them on crypto and teaching them the game. And, you know, that's where this was birthed from.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Let's talk about mindsets. So during the first conversation that we had, you mentioned a book. I want you to tell the story of that book and your thoughts on limited thinking and thinking big.
Okay, so you're talking about the situation, and it, you know, I tell people all the time, trauma creates diamonds. Like that literally is how I think about it. You know, if you learn how to process your trauma, and you can get to the other side of it and see it as, you know, something that was pushing you in the right direction, and seeing it as God giving you a lesson to bring you blessings, then it works. So, you know, I had a traumatic, you know, 18th birthday. The summer after I graduated, my father passed away. And, you know, this was, you know, the week before my 18th birthday. So I go to my dad's funeral. I leave the funeral. A couple days later, I have to prepare for my graduation party / birthday party. And it was just so much emotionally that I went into like a depression. And during this depression, I was sitting in my mom's house in the basement on my computer. And all of a sudden, something just told me to turn around. And I turned around and I looked at the bookshelf that was sitting behind me, and it was my dad's old bookshelf with all of his books in there. One book stood out to me, and that's the book, you know, I talked about, The Magic of Thinking Big. And I went and grabbed this book, I pick it up, and literally in the book, it's got all of these sticky notes on pages. I go straight to those pages and I start reading, and my mind was blown after reading just the tabs, because it was like I had an opportunity to connect with my dad, you know, after him being gone, and still get the value and the lessons and the wisdom that he was giving me when he was here, but after he was gone. And I literally like cried after reading that book. And the book talks about mindset, which is what you said. It's about, you know, we think within our worldview, we think within these our siloed perspectives. And what I mean by that, I grew up in a small town and I hadn't traveled much. And so my whole way of thinking about the world was based off of what I seen on TV, what I see in my neighborhood, and what I'm being told. Mm. That was it. I didn't know there was more outside of that. And so that book made me start thinking about, like, if I model my behavior and my thinking after people that have become successful, then I can become successful as well. As long as I don't go back into this small thing, it's the thought process and thinking. And after reading that book, man, I sat down and I came up with a plan on what I wanted to do with my life. And I ended up accomplishing everything that I wrote down within 6 years of reading that book. I went from working in a factory, getting laid off, making $16 an hour, to 4 years later, working at the Pentagon, making $85,000 a year with no college degree at all. And that book was the spark.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. And so that being said, seeing as you already have the mindset of someone who thinks big, you are someone who feels there are no limitations to what you can do, what are your future goals, both personal and professional?
So on a personal level, I'm gonna have a family. I'm excited about that. I will have a family, and I'm excited to have a family and, you know, allow that to be an aspect of my legacy and, you know, pour all of this energy and effort into them. I'm looking forward to that moment. And on a, you know, also on a personal level, I call myself future president for a reason, you know, and there's a lot more that's coming. There's a lot more that's coming. What people have just seen is just the beginning of the total vision, man. I tell people all the time, one of the things that I've always seen is this vision of me speaking on a stage to thousands of people and them losing their minds, right? And so I'm just gonna say that has manifested and it's coming soon and everybody will see it, right? And so the concept of future president means waking up the millennial generation and the rest of the world to the fact that our future leaders have to be technical, just like our leaders of the past had to be military. It's because our national security depends on people in office and leading us that understand today and understand tomorrow and can help us get there.
Perfectly said. Isaac, man, I appreciate you coming through. Appreciate you sharing your story and your insights. And, you know, where can people find you or your company if they're looking to get some more information about what you do?
So the easiest way is to Google it. You know, I talk about Barack Obama. So many people misspelled his name for years, but for some reason we all, you know, were able to find him. So go to Google, type my name in, Issac Barnes. You'll see stuff come up. You can also go to IssacBarnes.com. From there, you'll get links to my Instagram, my LinkedIn, my Twitter. Learn more about me. You'll be able to contact me. And, you know, we'll go from there. But brother, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you, everything that you've done as well. You created an amazing platform. I salute you for thinking big as well, because that's what it's going to take. You know, you already know how difficult it is for us, period. And the fact that you've been able to pull this off and you're creating, you know, pathways for more of us to see that this is possible. I just want to say I salute you and I thank you for being obedient and keep pushing, brother.
Thank you, Isaac. I appreciate that.
Definitely, man.
All right. Well, you have a great rest of the day and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
All right, brother. You too, man.
Take care.
All right. See you.